Top 25 case study assessment interview questions and answers. Case study assessments are widely used in interviews to evaluate a candidate's analytical thinking, problem-solving ability, decision-making skills, and communication style. Employers use these questions to understand how you approach real-world business challenges, analyze data, manage constraints, and propose practical solutions. Success in a case study interview depends on structured thinking, clarity, and logical reasoning, rather than having a single correct answer. Preparing consistent, well-developed responses helps demonstrate confidence and professionalism. 1. How do you approach a case study problem? I approach a case study problem by first clearly understanding the objective and identifying the key question that needs to be answered. I gather all relevant information, separate facts from assumptions, and structure problem into manageable parts. Then I analyze each component logically, using data where available. I generate possible solutions, evaluate their feasibility, and select the most practical option. Finally, I summarize my reasoning clearly, ensuring my recommendations align with the original objective and constraints. 2. How do you identify the main problem in a case study? I identify the main problem by carefully reviewing the case details and clarifying the core challenge the organization is facing. I look beyond surface symptoms to understand root causes. Asking why repeatedly helps narrow down the actual issue. I also consider stakeholder perspectives and business goals. By distinguishing primary problems from secondary issues, I can focus my analysis effectively and avoid wasting time on irrelevant details, ensuring my solution addresses the most critical concern. 3. How do you analyze data provided in a case study? I analyze case study data by first organizing it into categories, such as financials, operations, market trends, or customer behavior. I look for patterns, inconsistencies, and key drivers affecting performance. Quantitative data is reviewed using basic calculations or comparisons, while qualitative data is interpreted contextually. I always relate data insights back to the main problem. This structured approach helps ensure that conclusions are evidence-based rather than assumptions-driven. 4. How do you handle incomplete information in a case study? When information is incomplete, I make reasonable assumptions based on industry knowledge and clearly state them. I focus on what can be logically inferred from available data and identify what additional information would be helpful. I avoid overcomplicating the solution and instead prioritize practicality. Interviewers often test judgment under uncertainty, so demonstrating structured thinking and transparency about assumptions shows confidence and sound decision-making even with limited data. 5. How do you prioritize issues in a complex case study? I prioritize issues by assessing their impact on the overall objective and urgency. I focus first on factors that significantly affect outcomes, such as revenue, cost, risk, or customer satisfaction. I use frameworks or ranking methods to organize issues logically. Addressing high-impact problems first ensures efficient use of time. This approach prevents distraction by minor details and helps deliver solutions that provide the greatest value to the organization. 6. How do you develop possible solutions in a case study? I develop solutions by brainstorming multiple options that directly address the root cause of the problem. I consider operational, financial, and strategic perspectives. Each solution is evaluated based on feasibility, cost, risk, and alignment with business goals. I avoid focusing on a single idea too early. Comparing alternatives allows me to justify my final recommendation logically and demonstrates balance. Strategic thinking to the interviewer. 7. How do you evaluate risks in your proposed solution? I evaluate risks by identifying potential challenges related to implementation, cost overruns, market response, or operational capacity. I assess the likelihood and impact of each risk and suggest mitigation strategies. This might include phase implementation, contingency planning, or additional data analysis. Acknowledging risks shows realism and preparedness. Employers value candidates who not only propose solutions, but also anticipate obstacles and plan responsibly. 8. How do you communicate your case study findings? I communicate findings by presenting a clear structure, problem statement, analysis, key insights, and recommendation. I use simple language, avoid jargon, and focus on logic rather than excessive detail. Visual summaries or bullet points help clarity when appropriate. I tailor communication to the audience, ensuring decision-makers understand both the reasoning and the outcome. Clear communication demonstrates confidence and ensures the value of the analysis is fully understood. 9. How do you manage time during a case study assessment? I manage time by first allocating minutes to understanding the problem, analysis, solution development, and final presentation. I avoid spending too much time on one section. Staying structured helps me progress steadily. If time becomes limited, I focus on delivering a clear, well-reasoned recommendation rather than perfecting every detail. Effective time management shows discipline and the ability to perform under pressure. 10. How do you use frameworks in case studies? I use frameworks as tools to structure thinking, not as rigid templates. Frameworks such as SWOT, Porter's 5 Forces, or profitability analysis help organize ideas and ensure no major area is overlooked. I adapt frameworks to fit the case rather than forcing the case to fit the framework. This flexible use demonstrates strong analytical skills and practical application, rather than memorized responses. 11. How do you justify your final recommendation? I justify my recommendation by linking it directly to the problem statement and supporting it with key data insights and logical reasoning. I explain why alternative options were less suitable and highlight expected benefits. I also address risks and assumptions transparently. This balanced explanation shows critical thinking and builds credibility. Interviewers want to see confidence supported by evidence rather than opinion alone. 12. How do you handle disagreement during a case discussion? I handle disagreement by listening carefully, acknowledging alternative viewpoints, and responding respectfully. I support my perspective with logic and data rather than emotion. If another argument is stronger, I'm willing to adapt my position. Collaboration and openness demonstrate maturity and teamwork. Case interviews often test interpersonal skills, so constructive discussion is just as important as analytical ability. 13. How do you ensure your solution is practical? I ensure practicality by considering resource availability, timelines, organizational capability, and constraints. I avoid overly complex solutions that may be unrealistic. I ask whether the solution can be implemented with existing systems and skills. Practicality matters as much as innovation. Demonstrating realistic thinking shows I understand real-world business limitations and can deliver solutions that work beyond theory. 14. How do you deal with pressure during a case interview? I deal with pressure by staying calm, breathing steadily, and focusing on structured thinking. I remind myself that interviewers value the process, not perfection. Breaking the problem into steps helps reduce stress. Clear communication and logical pacing help maintain confidence. Handling pressure effectively demonstrates resilience, a key skill in fast-paced professional environments. 15. How do you balance detail with big-picture thinking? I balance detail and big-picture thinking by first understanding overall objectives, then using data to support strategic conclusions. I avoid getting lost in numbers without context. Each detail I analyze serves a broader purpose. This balance ensures solutions are both accurate and strategically aligned. Employers look for candidates who can think holistically while still managing specifics effectively. 16. How do you identify key assumptions in a case study? I identify key assumptions by examining gaps in information and determining what must be true for the analysis to proceed. I clearly state these assumptions and ensure they are reasonable and industry-aligned. I avoid making unnecessary or extreme assumptions. Identifying assumptions demonstrates awareness of uncertainty and analytical maturity. Transparency allows interviewers to follow my reasoning and evaluate the validity of my conclusions. 17. How do you handle numerical calculations in a case study? I handle calculations by organizing numbers clearly and explaining my approach step by step. Accuracy matters, but clarity is equally important. I estimate when appropriate and state approximations openly. I focus on interpreting results rather than just calculating them. This approach demonstrates comfort with numbers, logical reasoning, and the ability to translate calculations into meaningful business insights. 18. How do you deal with ambiguous case questions? I deal with ambiguity by clarifying objectives and defining the scope before diving into analysis. I ask logical clarifying questions if allowed. When ambiguity remains, I make reasonable assumptions and explain them clearly. Handling ambiguity confidently shows adaptability and problem-solving ability. Employers value candidates who can operate effectively without complete information, as real-world challenges are rarely perfectly defined. 19. How do you evaluate trade-offs in a case study? I evaluate trade-offs by comparing benefits, costs, risks, and long-term impact of each option. I consider both quantitative and qualitative factors. Clearly explaining why one option is preferable shows strategic judgment. Trade-off analysis demonstrates decision-making skills, especially when no option is perfect. Employers value candidates who can make balanced decisions under constraints. 20. How do you incorporate stakeholder perspectives? I incorporate stakeholder perspectives by identifying who is affected by the decision and considering their priorities. Customers, employees, management, and investors often have different interests. Balancing these viewpoints helps create sustainable solutions. Acknowledging stakeholders shows emotional intelligence and strategic awareness. This approach ensures recommendations are realistic and more likely to gain support during implementation. 21. How do you ensure logical flow in your analysis? I ensure logical flow by structuring my analysis step by step and clearly linking each point to the next. I avoid jumping between ideas randomly. Summarizing periodically helps maintain clarity. Logical flow allows interviewers to follow my reasoning easily and demonstrate strong communication skills alongside analytical thinking. 22. How do you handle follow-up questions in a case interview? I handle follow-up questions by listening carefully and responding thoughtfully without becoming defensive. I clarify my reasoning and adjust if new information is introduced. Follow-up questions are an opportunity to deepen analysis. Staying composed and flexible shows confidence, curiosity, and strong problem-solving skills. 23. How do you demonstrate creativity in case studies? I demonstrate creativity by exploring alternative solutions, considering unconventional approaches, and linking ideas across domains. Creativity is balanced with feasibility. Innovative thinking shows adaptability and adds value, especially when combined with solid analysis. Employers appreciate candidates who can think beyond standard solutions while remaining practical. 24. How do you learn from case study feedback? I learn from feedback by reflecting on strengths and areas for improvement. I identify gaps in my analysis or communication and adjust my approach for future cases. Feedback helps refine problem-solving techniques and build confidence. Continuous improvement is essential for professional growth, and openness to feedback demonstrates maturity. 25. Why are case study assessments important to employers? Case study assessments allow employers to evaluate real-world problem-solving skills, analytical thinking, communication, and decision-making. Unlike traditional interviews, they show how candidates think under pressure. Case studies reveal adaptability, structure, and judgment. Employers use them to predict on-the-job performance and identify candidates who can handle complex challenges effectively. Case study assessment interviews are designed to test structured thinking, adaptability, and communication rather than memorize answers. Delivering consistent, well-reasoned responses demonstrates professionalism and confidence. By focusing on clarity, logic, and practicality, you can effectively showcase your analytical abilities. Preparing thoroughly for these questions helps you approach case interviews with confidence and perform a high level across industries and roles.